Welcome to another episode of the Pay, Play, Profit podcast. It's Jessica May here, your co-host of the Pay, Play, Profit podcast. Normally, I have my co-host Marilyn with me. I've invited Chris Mailer, CPA, back to our podcast. So excited to do some back-to-back sessions with him. And we're going to dive into creating a culture that champions cybersecurity. Chris, I don't know about you. Most people might not get really excited about a topic like cybersecurity, but I am super excited for this one.
I'm excited about it, and it's excited enough that I volunteered to take on the role for our company to ensure that we're as secure as we can be.
Yeah, and I can't wait to dive into all that stuff. So here we go. Okay, Chris, so we're back on the podcast, Two Peas in a Pod, talking about cybersecurity today. And I think my excitement around this is because, number one, we're an online business. And number two, we're a trust business because of what we do. You know, people really trust us with a lot of information and a lot of data. And we have to really champion protecting that. And three, I think we have a great opportunity for our listeners to say, you don't have to be a trust business to have a cybersecurity kind of awareness about you, that if you're doing business online or virtually in your online or e-commerce business, there should be a lot of nuggets that our listeners can walk away with today to think about that they might not have thought about. And then also, I'm excited to kind of talk to you and let the people hear from your lens how you feel about our year that we've been in EOS, because it's brought changes for everyone on our team, including you, and kind of put you kind of into a new trajectory, even as a CPA for your career even. So let's dive into that first, just as a little nugget. Guys, if you've been around the block, we've talked about our EOS journey, the entrepreneurial operating system that was founded by Gino Wickman and his team from the book Traction. Chris, from your lens, what would you say about our year of EOS, and how do you feel about all the things that have developed over that year?
Well, let's see, the words shocking and surprising come to mind.
Yes.
If you had told me a year ago that I would be wearing the hats that I now wear, I would have thought you were nuts. I was in the mindset that I needed to be doubling down on tax preparation and planning and consultation. And instead, my role is elevated to just help others to do that job well, while basically protecting our good name and reputation and protecting the assets of our clients, especially their identification and cyber assets. So to that end, EOS was really the catalyst for it. And it's been kind of a progressive revelation to us, if you will. We started out thinking we're going to have a management system that just help us get a better handle around what we were doing as we were doing it. And as we got into it, it led us to realize, well, we just really need to turn everything upside down and quit thinking about the way we've always done things and start thinking about how we need to be organized to do things, to deliver the best possible slate of services to our clients.
Yeah.
And with that, then all of a sudden, instead of being director of taxation, my role gravitated, as an offshoot of that, because it all sprang from the roots of what we were doing.
Yes.
We realized, okay, well, we really need to nail down the compliance piece, which we've recently talked about. But from that, I just had a sense that, well, there's more that we need to look at too. And when we had an epiphany in May about how to better deliver our tax services to people, I realized that we really needed to address the security aspect internally, as well as to try to help our clients with that as well. And that's I think the purpose of this podcast today.
Because we always kind of had the bones of it. Again, like you said, we've always done subsets of it, roots of it, right? But I love your word elevate. And who knew that on our Vision Traction Organizer, when we said our core focus was going to be reimagining entrepreneurial success, that's exactly what we've done for ourselves too, which is what I love about us as well. Like, there's no theory here, folks. We're always working to do the things that we're sharing with you guys. We're not really espousing theory around here, where it's kind of like through the trenches. This is what we've learned. And I love your expression of both shocking and surprising. And I think all of us feel like that is truly the two words that you could use. And it's been in a good way, especially for me. And I've loved seeing your energy and your passion and your excitement evolve from your chair on our leadership team, with one of your roles being cybersecurity, and really taking the bones of what we had and putting it into a frame that's going to help protect us as we grow and protect our clients. So I think it's fantastic. And I think it's awesome, the share that you had there around that. And what I'd love to do is just very practically. So your chair on the leadership team is IT and compliance. And guys, if you run on EOS, the way that they help you drive extreme clarity and not overcomplicate the lines of communication is they use what's called an accountability chart, which Chris and I from our old school days keep confusing sometimes as an org chart, because that's totally what it looks like. But it's really an accountability chart, right, Chris?
Yes.
That accountability chart, man, it's tough. But when we got it right, it felt good, didn't it? Like when we kind of got it down and nailed down, and you had the function, not the title, and the 5 roles of the outcomes that chair is going to drive, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, on an old organization chart, you would never find a role called integrator.
Right.
And yet there it is. And my position reports to this integrator. This integrator in our company is almost half my age. And yet when we recently had a quarterly review session together, it's just was very obvious. Okay, what the integrator does for the business is basically to integrate us.
Yeah,
and
to integrate.
Keep us all on the same page of sheet music. And it was just the absolute right thing that this person half my age is having this meeting with me and everything. And I just realized that her skill sets that she brings to the table for us are perfect for it. And, for an old guy like me, that was a bit of a revelation. And it was like, wow, this is good.
Yeah,
this is really
cool.
good.
Yeah.
And so, cool. I don't think had we not embarked upon EOS as a management system, that we would have gotten to this point at least no time before I get to retirement. Because
it feels like it's been slow but very fast.
Well, it's been a basically nearly a 2-year whirlwind of change, and again, it's a progressive revelation, because when you start getting into it, you're still working under your old mindset. And okay, I've got a president, a vice president, or a dozen vice presidents, and I've got managers and supervisors and underlings, and and it flows down that way. And off to the side is your admin assistant.
Yes.
And maybe off to the side administrative functions like HR and IT. Yeah. And that's, you blow that up.
Yeah, blow that up.
Just totally blows up, and you start totally recreating from ground floor up, the organization as it really is and needs to be, because that old mindset, I mean, we don't always operate that way, and it causes friction and dissension and frustration and turnover.
Bottlenecks or hard to change, big boat, slow to move, no agility. Right.
All those things that hurt profitability.
Yes, that hurt and fulfillment.
And fulfillment. That's right.
Yes.
So
yeah.
So I was going to say, well, we start with this roll up here of visionary, and under that's the integrator, and then the integrator helps all these
leadership team,
areas, the leadership team, but it helps us all to work together, understand what our roles are. That integrator has been the one that's taken the bull by the horns to understand the full depth of EOS.
Makes it real.
And make it real and drive us and keep us on time. So our meetings are purposeful. They've got their agenda. We work through them, and they don't run over rarely.
Yeah. Sometimes, guys.
Sometimes human nature kicks in. Sometimes
Yeah.
there's an issue that just has to be hammered out, and people have a little extra time. But typically, we force us to be respectful of time. We rate those meetings. We have hot button set for the next week. We've got everything laid out, and we've got it. We bring stuff to our table for our functions. We also have our measures. This is the key measure or a couple of measures that we need to track weekly and bring to the table. And if we're off track, we've got to tell folks. We have what we call rocks. Rocks are basically major projects quarter by quarter
that get us to our VTO.
That get us. That's exactly right. That get us
our North Star, as we call it.
To our North Star, exactly. And every week we got to report on, we on track or off track, because under that we've got various milestones we've identified through the quarter that we've got to hit. And if we're off track with it, we got to tell them. And then we're going to have put it to an issues page, and we're going to discuss, why are you off track? What do you got to do to get back on track?
Mm-hmm.
And it keeps the accountability there. And lack of accountability is where moss grows, because there's darkness, there's a lot of shade.
Absolutely.
And so that accountability shines light in the area. The moss doesn't grow.
I love it. And
everything keeps moving forward.
Yeah. And we can't talk about creating a culture that champions cybersecurity without talking about EOS. It's a big, huge component of culture, right? And so as through that whole process, which I love, guys, if you could just see Chris right now, like all of us light up when we talk about like how things have really changed for us and changed for us as individuals as well to help us all grow. So culture is a big reason why your values are going to start standing out, right? So we're talking about championing cybersecurity. We believe in this so much. There's a function on our leadership team that's ultimately going to lead and manage and hold our organization to the highest standards that we can be in this area. And it is for you too, even if you're small, to think about cybersecurity. And so on your function, Chris, you have 5 roles. Can you quickly, not the bullets necessarily, but can you quickly talk about the 5 roles of your function, just so they kind of get an idea of what this seat looks like?
Absolutely. Again, it's IT/compliance.
Yes.
Is the role. So, and as we talked in a previous podcast, I've got a role of income tax research and education, because the tax field changes so rapidly. The laws, the rules, the regulations, the can do's, can't do's, it's just a constant state of flux. It's my job to stay on top of that and keep our people apprised of that. If there are communications that need to come out to our clients to drive that. Mm-hmm. So we're working on that to faithfully execute the compliance in all areas: legal,
insurance,
moral, insurance,
ethical,
risk, the ethical things, our internal values, to make sure that we're staying on top of that. And then more mundane things like, or more art.
Quality assurance.
We're used to, but the quality checks, the quality assurance part, implementing a system there and working on that. Then a big role that has really surprised me of just how large it is. I knew we had the issue to need to be addressed, but the IT and cybersecurity champion role. Mm-hmm. And this, I actually volunteered for this. We hadn't really put it on the plate when we first created the compliance role, but it was born 5 years ago. I was with a large local CPA firm and using the best tax software in the country at $40,000 a pop. And we had a security breach, and we had 145 clients who had their information compromised. And it just about killed us. Our reputation, our clients were better understanding than we were about it, by and large, but it just about killed us. Yeah. We spent a lot of time during tax season. We spent a lot of time trying to chase it down, fix it, and then determine why it happened and where it happened. It actually happened outside our walls, more on our tax software provider side. And so it just got messy and all. And
so that's the third row, because we're going to expand into some things around that.
Yeah. 9 of my clients were affected out of that 145, and I spent a year working with them to clean stuff up.
Yeah.
So just a
You didn't know it
cyber
way
theft,
back in before your TBL days. It'd be preparing you for today, did you?
I did not, but God works everything that way.
Yeah,
So,
he does. So what would be the fourth and fifth role for that seat?
so the fifth role would be just
The
our
fourth role.
or the fourth role would be our IT compliance, our tech and core processes, looking at our hardware and software needs, establishing rules around the compliance and everything.
And if you have employees, guys, you have hardware and software needs. And if you're using software, and there's a lot to that process as well. So that tech and core process around all the little peripherals that you have is really a big deal. And centrally locating that with you in this chair is
phrase, all the little peripherals, because even a cell phone can be a big problem, and it can be one of the biggest problems, and it can be as large as people accessing company files and stuff off their smartphone because they're not at the office and they want to get something done, or not at their office, and creating a potential cyber breach. But it could be as simple as your company provided the cell phone to the employee. Employee got caught using it for something like downloading, porn or passing porn around or something like that, and got caught. And now because that's
or somehow got on the dark web or something through just gaming or anything, right? An app.
But something got compromised, and your company owns the phone, so you're liable.
And even if you give them permission to do work from their own phone, like bring your own device, that's really popular in the virtual online space. And there's lots of discussions around bring your own device right now and how that looks. So we got to take care of that piece. So that's the fourth part of that chair that everybody needs to think about. Even if you're a one-person company, right? One-person team, you need to think about that. Yeah. And what was the fifth role?
The fifth role would be my involvement with the as a profit and tax pro, having client assignments for tax prep, then also doing tax return reviews, quality checks.
Which is important because that work keeps the compliance work relevant, right? Like you
keeps me fresh.
Yes.
Yeah. Otherwise, I just become bookish with it, and I'm telling you what I've read, and my practical understanding of it, starts waning, and that doesn't do anybody any good, and then I become worthless.
Yeah. And so guys, what we want you to know here is, for one, inside our organization, we value this so much that we've made the investment of appointing leadership for it inside our organization. And as you can tell by what all the things Chris shared, there's 5 different types of ways that he's going to kind of walk that out inside our organization and with our team. But don't think that you're too small to think about creating a culture that champions cybersecurity. And the earlier you start doing it, the better, right? Because the worst thing you can do, we've even got an episode about insurance that we'll drop here. So we'll drop Chris's prior episode about compliance so you guys can understand that piece of it. We'll drop a prior episode that we had with our insurance agents just about insuring your organization and things like that. And you really need to be proactive on the cybersecurity side. So what we're going to do is just expand a little bit further in that role 3, Chris, which was like what was role 3 again? Can you repeat role 3?
The IT and cybersecurity champion.
Yeah. So don't think you're too small for this conversation. And if you plan to have a team and a team that grows, especially virtually, just because you don't have a building, your building is your laptop or your desktop, right? So you do have a building that just doesn't have walls. And so I am looking forward to you expanding on what does that mean when you say IT and cybersecurity champion? Like, how is it looking inside these walls? And what's the core, purpose of that, the vision behind this role, if you will?
Well, I think it's twofold. Number one, it's to, and this is not in order of importance, but number one would be to just make sure that we are running smoothly, properly, efficiently, and that our tech stack isn't in conflict through that stack, causing problems from one platform to another, one application to another, and that our ease of access is not impugned any more than it needs to be in order to affect the security part. That second role would be the security of intellectual property, of identity property,
Mm-hmm.
and financial property.
Yeah.
And that would be both inside our company shell and in with the interface with our clients.
Yes. And I think when we were talking about the framework for this as part of our rock planning, because we're in the middle of kind of shoring this particular function up. And you said to protect us from threats, both domestic and foreign too. Like this is what we're trying to do. And I loved that statement when you said it, because there are threats all around us and they're changing constantly every day. And so what are some practical things that we've done inside our organization and partners we've chosen to partner with to help make that actually happen on the ground? Like, what does that look like?
Well, that word partner is important. The very first thing to do, and that can help you more than anything else, is to find a good, experienced IT service provider you can work with, someone who can do the mundane things such as monitor your systems for odd activity, can advise you about your hardware and software, can do things such as keep all of your software updates, your application updates updated, and monitor that to make sure they're done that. Because let's face it, if you use, say, Microsoft products, you get patches about every other day fixing this or fixing that. So many of those are related to security issues. And if you let those pile up for a month or so, you've got potential security openings in your programs.
Just as something as simple as updating your systems. And I mean, I can tell you right now, like, you could go a long time without updating the system because you don't want to be bothered by the updating of the system, right?
So that IT provider can do that for you. They monitor that and keep everything up to date. They've got the headspace and the understanding to know of new threats that come along in terms of viruses, phishing scams, and all these things to keep
dark
you aware
web
of
activity for an email address.
They'll monitor that dark web activity for you. Like I was looking yesterday, I have the option of doing a manual monitor of dark web activity on any of our employees myself, but there's a big warning about it that you don't know what you're doing out there, and it's a risky thing. So proceed with caution, and we're not responsible if you do this. They're the experts and they know, and it's so complex these days. You just really got to have that partnership.
Yeah.
And we do have one. I'll shamelessly plug them because I've enjoyed working with them so far. Computer Depot of Knoxville, Tennessee.
Yes. And they've worked with us really well as a virtual organization, you know.
And they or someone that you've got, but in our case, they keep us on our toes with our security knowledge, IT security knowledge, cyber security knowledge, with a service that they purchase and provide to us called PII Protect. And it's got a several-fold approach to keeping you aware of your cybersecurity knowledge and making it public to your company and grading you.
Yes.
And telling you whether you're not worth a darn, you're middling, or hey, you're doing a pretty good job individually and as a company. And so we've been looking at that. We've gotten ourselves up to the high side of the middle range. We're close to crossing over into really.
We're using actual data to determine how effective we're being. Data.
And they've got a major test that you take to determine your cyber knowledge.
And all our employees take the test. And
there's around 200 mini, like 2.5 minute videos with a 4-question quiz afterward to do that you're graded on. There is also a policy and procedures checklist that you've got to read through and check off that affects that, because there's so much information in that thing. And as you go through it, you realize, wow, we're sitting ducks out here. And we know
well, we're not anymore,
well, we're not, but we're targets. We're not sitting ducks, but we are targets because.
And as you grow, the target gets bigger.
We have social security numbers, bank numbers, credit card numbers, your names, your addresses, where your kids live, where they go to school.
We take this seriously.
And it is our job, when you've entrusted that to us, to not let you down.
Yes, absolutely.
So it's absolutely utmost seriousness. That IT partnership with for us with Computer Depot, but with you, with whoever your provider is the first thing you need to do and establish. It's essential. Whether you're a one-person shopper or have.
And I just like to mention, like, people hear this and are like, that's got to be so overwhelming and that has to be so expensive. Well, first of all, if we look at things as expenses and not investments, we're already in the wrong frame of mind, right? So we talk about all the time, we invest, we don't spend. But even if you're that one-person shop, but let me break it down to you guys. Like, it's not as the investment and the ROI on our investment and what we do invest, it's not as much as you might think, because we basically have a fractional IT support company in Computer Depot. They monitor our hardware and our software, like Chris was just telling you. They give us advice on hardware that we should be using. So we're not just out there trying to decide based on comparing systems on Amazon. They are actually tech support for our team. So our team, if they have issues with tech, they have a phone number they can call and an email address they can provide. They give us this PII Protect, which gives us this overall dashboard about how we're doing with our employee security. And they get that security training. They get weekly micro trainings, which are 2 minutes long, which I happen to love. I mean, I've learned so much just going through that process. And they support Chris in his role. Like, your leadership and your team members need support to be effective in their job. And, we have a firewall installed, and Chris is able to investigate that with an expert instead of having to go out there and just Google and YouTube himself to death and pray he's made the right decision as a result of this. And all for less than $600 a month for our 13-person team. And so it's not as expensive as you might think, but not making that $600 investment, go back and listen to the insurance episode that's dropped into the show notes. And let me tell you this, it's not just for people like us. If you're collecting credit cards and you're collecting email addresses, you now have sensitive data. Period.
Yes, you do.
You cannot afford to think that this is only for the big boys and girls or the people that has all of this information, like us being in an accounting and tax practice. No, if you have an email list where you're collecting email addresses on your website and you collect credit card payments and you have access to information related to those credit cards, including the address for the billing of the credit card and the last 4 digits, even if it's mass, you have opportunities here. If you have your Google email on your phone and your phone isn't password protected and it gets stolen, and that's the door, there's just so much, right, Chris? Like, we could go on, and we don't have all the time to go on and on, right?
Yeah, but ultimately, it's not a matter, you've heard this before about many things, but in terms of getting an attack, a cyber attack on your business, on your information, on you personally, it's not a matter of if, but it's when. And I can tell you that even the small business, if they take a hit, it's going to cost them maybe $50,000, maybe $100,000, maybe more, just to fix the problem.
Which is why we have our cyber media insurance policy, right?
You got to have that insurance, but then it's also possibly going to put you out of business because people are going to say, "Well, I don't want.
You didn't take care of me.
I don't want my information out with you anymore."
And guys, it goes on from there. This has changed the culture of our business. We used to think it would be fantastic to work from anywhere, but we're work from home. We're not work from anywhere. And that's because we're creating a culture that champions cybersecurity. They need to be on their Ethernet, not working from Wi-Fi whenever possible, and especially not public Wi-Fi. So if you're running around here on public Wi-Fi trying to it's great to work from a cafe, right? But maybe it needs to be a secure hotspot on your own phone where you're not where you have better security for your information. So you just have to think about things like this. And Chris, the whole reason why we brought you on is because we're partners, processors, and protectors around here, right? And our podcast is no different. We want to deliver that kind of value to you no matter what.
We do. And since we're using P words, let's use one more, passwords.
Yes.
because I'm old fashioned, I've always kept my passwords offline on a spreadsheet.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a spreadsheet that's got 300 passwords on it now. And Jess and Marilyn, because they're younger and more hip and more attuned to things, they've been using a password manager, LastPass, for several years. And I was a little daunted by that, thinking, well, what happens when LastPass gets breached? Then they have the keys to everybody's kingdom then. And so I went to our IT service provider and said, tell me about this. And they said, this is why a tool like LastPass or a similar password manager is better than what you're doing. And they explained to me how they encrypt things, they change things up, but they in the process of doing it, they also help you not to have to try to remember all your passwords or keep that spreadsheet off to the side. So it simplifies my life, but it also makes us more secure. Those are things I would not have known.
Yeah.
Okay, using
and LastPass is free. We'll include a link for you guys to LastPass. We use it. We love it. You can use it free. They have a premium version for individuals, but we moved over to LastPass Teams because, again, we care about being a partner, processor, and protector and working that way and establishing those security measures. And so that is, a very big part of creating a culture that champions cybersecurity, educating your team, giving them the knowledge they need, and giving them the tools that they need to actually do that in a simple, practical, powerful way. Right, Chris?
Yes, absolutely. And then the last thing is, or not the last thing, but going back on just keeping up to date on it. There's no way I can keep up to date on everything going on in the cyber world. So that partnership helps to do that. And we pass that on where appropriate and applicable. But we also are always getting ourselves tested. Our provider sends us fake phishing emails from time to time to try to trip us up. And if we get caught, if we happen to open up a link we shouldn't have opened up, they'll say, gotcha. And it's embarrassing. And it shows up to the rest of the team. And I can tell you, I opened up one a few months ago. They hit me at tax time and they knew it. I was vulnerable and it looked legitimate. And we had just changed out some software and I thought it was related to it. And I didn't do the basic things they taught us to do. And thankfully it was them.
Yeah.
But I learned my lesson. And so I take.
So they're testing us too. That's the other part, right? They're testing where we might be vulnerable and where we might be weak because we're all susceptible. It doesn't matter what seat we sit in. It doesn't matter how much information we know. We're all vulnerable and the scammers are getting smarter by the day.
And their testing raises our awareness.
Yes.
So we continue.
We're all like in chat, like, hey, we got this email. Did you get this email? We're like, don't open it. Like we're having conversations about it.
Yeah, and I was slinking off to the side.
But that's the other part of what they do with their service. They test our vulnerabilities and our weaknesses because we need to know where those are so that we're raising that awareness. That's what creating a culture of being a champion of cybersecurity is all about. I mean, this really kicks my C and my S into high gear on my disc because I'm a real high C and a real high S, although most people wouldn't believe that because I can drop it to the floor in my adaptive. But in my natural, I love this part, this cautiousness that we have and this desire for stability and cybersecurity. And what I want nothing more and we want nothing more for you listening right now to understand that you might be a one-person business, but you got into business because you had a dream. So don't want big things and play small in the moment, thinking that you don't need to think about these things. You do, because a breach could cost you everything you're trying to work for. And whether it's identity fraud or business identity fraud or a breach in just your contact information. I mean, that's why Chris and I wanted to come here and have this conversation because it's really important. And with the increase of what people are trying to do to attack us, both foreign and domestic, right? We've got to be diligent. We can't just stick our head in the sand and think this IT stuff is for all the big people in the world, right? It's for us too.
It's for everybody.
Yeah. Chris, this has been awesome. Any last things you'd like to say? If not, we're going to wrap it up.
Hey, just thanks for letting me and Jess and the TBL team be part of your lives. We appreciate it, and we'll learn it every day.
100%. I think that's a nice way to close. So that's a wrap, guys. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Pay, Play, Profit podcast. Probably in my top 5, I have to say. Marilyn, if she were here, would say, thanks so much for joining us. Marilyn, we miss you. Now, before we go, it's sharing is caring time. We want you to join us each week. So if you haven't already hit subscribe for this podcast, whether it's on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere you listen, please do so now. We would also love for you to consider leaving a 5-star review or share this episode with a fellow e-commerce, online, or service-based business owner that you think would benefit from gaining more pay, play, and profit in their business and life today. We hope you join us next week. And until then, be kind to yourself and each other, and don't be afraid to be a champion of your own cybersecurity destiny. This is Jessica May and Chris Mailer, CPA, signing off, y'all. See you later.